This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, now that enough craziness is happening, let me get back to the regularly scheduled plan of videos. And today's regularly scheduled video, there was really only supposed to be one, but because of things that has happened, White Helmet, Perry on One Free, this has gotten moved all the way to here. So you've gotten 3 videos today. And if you've watched all 3 videos, leave a comment down in the comment section below and tell me that you a 3-peat Wednesday champion. Let me know if y'all like the 3-peats, because during the season you might see more of them. I'm just saying. So if you like the 3-peat videos, might happen more. So let me know if y'all watched them in the comment section down below. But all right, let's jump into it, man. Let's talk about the quarterback room. How does this quarterback room look? Now, this room is a little bit more interesting than other rooms, right? Where depth might be a more important question for defensive tackle, where depth might be a more important question for edge, where depth might be more important for linebacker. It just isn't as important for quarterback for numerous reasons, because you hope your quarterback never doesn't have to play. Right? The quarterback doesn't rotate in on 3rd and down. It's just not a rotational position like that. So the depth is less important, but nonetheless, let's look at the entire room and evaluate it. So we're going to start here with Kellen Mond. There's not much to say about Kellen Mond. The Browns did try pretty hard to keep him. So I would say that there's definitely an interest in the Cleveland Browns to see what Kellen Mond has. I think we'll see a fair bit of him in the 3rd quarters of these preseason games. I think they're going to give DTR the 4th quarters of these preseason games. His body of work in the NFL has not been impressive. His body of work in college wasn't really that impressive to begin with. So I don't expect him to make the team, and I expect him to just kind of be a camp arm. All right, let's go Josh Dobbs first, then we'll talk about DTR, because I think DTR is a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit more to talk about when it comes to DTR. So Josh Dobbs is slated to be the backup quarterback for this team, the veteran backup quarterback. And here are the things that we know about Josh Dobbs throughout his time in the NFL. One, we know that multiple teams and quarterbacks have cited Josh Dobbs as how would I put this? A integral asset on the sidelines. What I mean by that is the brother is special on the clipboard, right? Like, he can just see things. He's really good to have on game days to talk to the quarterbacks. If you ever look at some of the old Pittsburgh stuff when he was in Pittsburgh, Ben would never go to his backup. He would run straight to Josh Dobbs to see what Josh Dobbs is seeing. Josh Dobbs, I would not be surprised if in 10 years we're talking about being a hot offensive coordinator prospect or something like that, right? Like, he has that kind of a mind, the kind of mind that usually becomes a prodigy in the coaching lanes, and he's an asset to this team. That's why I think he's going to be on the active roster, because they want him on the sidelines, because basically he's like having an extra offensive coordinator or offensive coach or quarterbacks coach there with you, because while he does not have the same physical ability as a Deshaun Watson, while he's not the same player as a Deshaun Watson, fairly often we see that the guys who do become the great offensive coordinators in the league, they're Sean McVay, right? You know, I don't think Kyle Shanahan ever played any like serious football. But Kyle Shanahan, he wasn't really a quarterback. And then you have all these guys, Zach Taylor, backup quarterbacks, basically. Like, even if you want to throw Cliff Kingsbury in there, these guys usually are the ones who end up becoming coaches. Josh Dobbs fits that mold to a T, except for he's just overqualified to be a coach in the NFL, right? Like, he has a aerospace engineering degree. Like, you know what I mean? He could have went to Georgia Tech or something like that. Like, so he's going to be very valuable for this team in the sideline capacity. How do I feel if Josh Dobbs has to play? If they're starting a game with Josh Dobbs, I don't feel as good as I felt with Jacoby Brissett, because Jacoby Brissett's a real deal, legitimate, like could start for somebody type quarterback. Josh Dobbs, not necessarily that, right? But the hope is, since Deshaun's not going to be suspended this year, is that you never really have to go to your backup so you can use them the most as an asset. That being said, if he has to come in, it depends on who you're playing. Maybe you can win, maybe you can't. He's very limited as a passer. Like, don't let the preseason stuff fool you. He still has his limitations on the football field. But I think it's a suitable backup. Not necessarily the greatest backup you could have, but most certainly a suitable backup, Josh Dobbs. All right, let's talk about DTR. DTR is interesting because so many people have ran wild with their theories on why the Browns drafted DTR, or what the Browns see in DTR, or did Jimmy Haslam make them draft DTR? And it's like, we have to remember he's a 5th round pick. And most 5th round picks, even at positions that tend to play early, they don't play early, right? Like, most 5th round picks don't really play in year one. Obviously, that's going to be the case for DTR. Now, what do I think the Browns' hope is with him? Well, when I had Jake Burns on, he kind of said that he thinks that the hope is that DTR becomes the long-term backup. I have my doubts about whether that's actually something that can happen if you can draft a long-term backup, because anybody, like, with DTR's 22, anybody who's like 26 by the time that their rookie deal ends up and looks like they could be decent at quarterback, they're going to get snapped up by somebody to start, and that quarterback's going to want to go somewhere to start. I don't think DTR's ambitions are to be a backup, right? Like, that's very young to accept a career backup role. That's just not realistic. Usually what happens is that if you're good enough to be a backup, at some point somebody thought you might have been good enough to start, you stink, and then you get humbled into accepting a backup position. You don't usually get backup quality quarterbacks who just accepted their backups for their whole career. That's usually a role that you have to get forced into, because no competitor worth his salt is going to be like, yeah, I'm cool being the backup coming out of college and never even trying to start. That don't make no sense to me. So I think it's a far-fetched idea that you could draft a backup quarterback and have him be your backup for 10 years. That's just plain silly to me. Like, I know that's the hope for the Browns, but, like, let's be real, that's not happening. The best you could do is that DTR gonna be a backup for like 2 years, right? You don't gotta re-sign Josh Dobbs because DTR there. Like, that's the best case scenario, and then DTR leaves in free agency if he's worth anything. And if he's not, then you're not gonna want to keep him as a backup. So I don't think this is a long-term backup move. I just think that's a little bit ridiculous. What I think is the case with DTR is, hey, look, they like him. They're taking a flyer. If he shows something in preseason, or if they need to go to him in a game and he shows something, then you have something you can move around for some assets. But this is basically the theory in the draft of, hey, if you just draft players that you like, good things tend to happen. And I think that's what DTR was. It wasn't for need. It wasn't for anything. But, hey, they were in the 5th round. He was the player they liked the most, best player available. You take the best player available. You tend to believe when you do that things are going to go right around it, no matter what you need to have happen, right? So if you take him here, maybe you could flip him for a draft asset. I think that's probably the real hope, right? I don't think the real hope is him being the backup for this team for 10 years. I think the real hope for him is that you could eventually flip him for an asset if he becomes good enough. So that's what I'm thinking is the case with DTR. Now let's talk about Deshaun Watson. What are the expectations for Deshaun? What are the hopes for Deshaun? What are the bare minimum? Where are we at with him? Right? And I think expectations, they're all over the place with him. nobody's going low. For as low as people are about those 6 games, it's interesting. And nobody national is like, hey, man, I only expect Deshaun to have 3,500 yards and this and that. Nobody's expecting that. Nobody's setting the bar low for him, despite the fact that everybody keeps talking about him as if he's never been good. So what's the expectation for Deshaun? My expectation for Deshaun has been laid out numerically. It's been laid out hyperbolically. It's been laid out in all different types of ways. And I'll reiterate myself. I think Deshaun should be, at the very least, in the conversation for the 12 best quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's the low end, right? If he reaches what are his own expectations in his mind, he would be top 5. But that's where he needs to be, right? That's the bare minimum of where he needs to be. He needs to be back into that top 15, well, not 15, top 12 conversation at quarterbacks, top 8 when it comes to in-year conference. That's where he needs to be, because if he's anything lower than that, the Browns will not be successful. The issue with the Cleveland Browns the last 4 years, we could point to all these other things going wrong and this and that, but the plain simple truth is, when we've had this core roster and the quarterback play's been good, we win games. When we've had this core roster and the quarterback play has been abysmal, we lose games. What does that tell you? It tells you that this team is a good quarterback away, right? And I'm not just saying seasons, right? Obviously, 2020 season, Baker Mayfield, best season of his career. Not a coincidence that this team goes 11-5 and almost beats the Chiefs in the playoffs. Not a coincidence there. But also, I'm saying, if you just look at the individual games where you got good quarterback play from Jacoby Brissett, you got good quarterback play from Deshaun Watson, you got good quarterback play from Baker Mayfield or whoever, you tend to win those games overwhelmingly because the roster is that good. And the roster has gotten only better over the years. So this is why they traded all those first round picks. This is why they went all in on Deshaun Watson, because the evidence is obvious. If you have consistent and good quarterback play, top 12 at the very least, this is a great team. If you don't, this is another team in the NFL that could go under 500. And that's on Deshaun. That's what the money's for, right? Like $230 million is to secure a quarterback who could do that for you. And that's what the expectation should be. He should be at least that good. If he's any better, cool. I ain't tripping. But the $230 million is to be at least that good. That's where the bar is, right? If people want to talk about where the bar is because of the contract, or if he should win the Super Bowl because of the contract, no, that's not how these things work. But there is a bottom line of what you have to reach if you're going to be paid that much and your level of play. And that's the bottom line for him. He has to be top 12. Will he be top 12? I'm confident that I'm at a 7 out of 10 with him. I'm confident that he will probably be at least at that level, if not better. They put some pieces around him. I think the offense is going to be more to his liking. Hopefully things go smoothly to start so they don't start panicking and changing things early on. But all the things look like they're in position for this to be a good year for not just Deshaun Watson, but for the Cleveland Browns. Because, again, we talk about teams being quarterback away. Just look at the record when they get good quarterback play, right? Every time you hear somebody say this team's a good quarterback away, look at their record when they get above average quarterback play. That tells you if that's actually true. With this team, the evidence is obvious. When they get good quarterback play, they win. When they don't, they lose. And you might say that's obvious for any team, but no. Deshaun Watson had one of the best seasons of his career, and the team won 4 games. It's not always a given that good quarterback play is going to lead to wins. You have to have something around it. But this is the type of team, right? Bad defense, this and that. You know, we can complain about all the flaws that the 21 team had, all the flaws that last year's team had. The fact is that if the quarterback play was better, it would not matter, because that's why quarterbacks are paid that money, because they can just Get rid of your flaws. They can make your flaws not matter. You know how many flaws the Kansas City Chiefs roster has? They got a ton of flaws. It's not a great looking roster when you look at it, but it just doesn't matter because Pat Mahomes is there. Look at the Bengals roster. It's not a great roster. It doesn't matter because Joe Burrow's there to a certain extent. Every roster has flaws. Every roster has holes in it. Every roster is not deep at every position. But the ones that need to be that deep at every position are the ones that don't have quarterbacks. The ones that have quarterbacks can get away with a couple of flaws because that's how important the quarterback position is. That's how much. Look at them rosters with Tom Brady on it. They're not great rosters. But it didn't matter because you had the best quarterback of all time. That's all I'm saying. So Deshaun, you know, we could blame it on anything else. We could blame it on this and that. But the fact of the matter is, if this team's 500 or below, it's because Deshaun Watson didn't play good enough. Point blank, period. If this team wins 10 plus games, it's because Deshaun lived up to expectations. That's where it's at with the quarterback room. That being said, I'm going to give this quarterback room, if I felt better about the backup situation, I would give it an A. And if we were coming off of a really good Deshaun Watson season, I would give it an A. But since neither of those things are what has happened, B+. That's where I'm at. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.